All right, good morning. Welcome to last week as we talk about love. We've been taking just our definition that we've been raised with and understanding, and we're throwing out the window and we're asking what God's definition of love is, and we've been comparing it and seeing how different it is. And for many of you in here, we've been saying this. We've been saying love is not an emotion, it's not a feeling, it's a decision, okay? And we know for a lot of you out there that that's kind of like sucking all the fun out of love for you. You're just like, You're more like, love is the feeling, and it's poetry, and it's passion, and we're like, no, it's a logical decision. And we're kind of taking the fun out of it for you, but I want to guarantee you that God is very passionate, and God actually gave us a book, several books in the Bible that are poetry. Like, God is passionate, God gets angry, God gets sad, God has emotions. He gave us those for a reason, but those are a byproduct of a much deeper thing, and love is much deeper than the things we're feeling and we're experiencing, and those are a byproduct of a much bigger thing that love actually is. So as we define love, that's what we're talking about. As we talk about love today, I want us to help us understand that love is very practical. When I was at a church in Missouri, I had a lot of time on my hands, and I didn't really have a hobby, so I started marriage counseling as a hobby, kind of. And so I would bring couples in, and over the course of about 7 years, 20, 30 couples I would work with and talk to about their relationship. Now, if it was a major crisis, if there was adultery, if there was an affair or something like that, I would usually kind of hook them up with a professional counselor. But if it was just normal kind of marriage stuff, I sat down and I kind of enjoyed it because I wanted to kind of figure out, why isn't this working? What's broken here? Why what's he doing? What's she doing? I get in there, and it was just sort of a hobby for me. Just in case you're wondering, I don't have that much time on my hands, so I've got fantasy football as a hobby now, so I don't do that as much, but it was just kind of a hobby for me. And what was interesting is, as we worked with all these couples, there were some real common themes. In fact, there was always one common theme, and it wasn't really unique. The stories were different, but the situations were exactly the same. And if you've struggled in your marriage or you've struggled in your relationship, I want you to know you're absolutely in the same boat as every other married person on the planet. It's all the same stuff. And one particular couple that came just sort of highlighted one of the big issues that happens in marriage, normal marriage, all the time. And that was this. We sat down and talked and got all the backstory out and everything, and talked to her, and she was like, I just don't feel like he loves me anymore, right? I don't feel like he loves me, and I would look over at him and be like, well, what do you feel about that? Do you feel like you love her? And he would say, well, she told me she wanted me to start taking out the garbage, so I started taking out the garbage. That didn't seem to help anything. And so then she said, I want you to stop watching as much football. And he was like, so I quit watching Monday Night Football. And I was looking at him going, I looked over at her, and I was like, he loves you. Quit watching Monday Night Football for you. What more do you want? Right? And he was like, I quit watching Monday Night. That didn't seem to help anything. And then she wanted me to take her out on a date. So I took her out on a date and spent like $100, and that didn't seem to help anything. And so he's just going through this checklist, and she comes up with the checklist, and I look over at her, and I'd be like, so, it looks like he's trying to do some stuff. And she was like, yeah, I know, but I just want to be the center of his world. I want to be his everything. I want him to cherish me. And I looked over at him, and I was like, do you love her? Do you cherish her? Is she the center of your world? And this was his response. He was like, yeah. That's all the passion the guy had, right? That was, yep, I guess so. Check that box, right? Yeah, I love her and everything. And what that kind of brought out, that happens in so many, is usually there's one person, and it's not always the woman. And in fact, I know that a lot of you out there that are married, and you're the lady in the situation, but you know full well that you're the dude, right? And you don't need to point. It's not nice. But anyway, and some of you guys, you might as well wear a dress, right? Because you're kind of the woman, and that's okay. There's no stereotypes. We're not trying to cram in anybody in any kind of hole here, but that's kind of what it is in the relationships. And there's always one person that's more analyzing the love based on how they feel about the other person, or based on how they feel, or the other person, they're analyzing their feelings. And the other person is got a list. They've got a checklist, and they're going, you know, at the end of the day, I did this and I did this and I did this. Why isn't that enough for you? Like, why isn't that the right thing? And the point I want to make today as we go through this is that actually the typical guy's approach, the list, the things that I practically do to love you, that's actually a better definition of God's love and the kind of love that he wants us to have for people. God gives us a checklist, and he says, hey, if you want to love somebody, you're going to work through the list. We don't normally think of it that way. We normally think of it, no, it's about how a person feels, and it's about, you know, it's about how the passion in the relationship and stuff like that, and God's going, no, it's a practical list. And if you have the right list, let me say that, the right list. See, the problem in that couple's relationship is she was giving him a list, but it was really the wrong list. It really wasn't about the trash. It wasn't about Monday Night Football. It wasn't even about going out on a date. It was the wrong list. And the problem was he was trying to execute the wrong list. She didn't even know the right list to give him. But his approach was actually right. He needs to work through these kind of check marks. And so today we want to kind of give the right list, and it's a list that God has. And if we want to figure out if somebody loves us, it isn't mysterious. It isn't something we have to try to figure. It's really easy. You just kind of work through the list. If you want to try to figure out if you love somebody, if you're being the father that you should be to your children, if you're doing what you need to do in your family, if you're loving somebody, it's not mysterious. It isn't on the table. It's not hard to figure out. It's actually a very logical, practical list. Again, some of you are like, man, you are sucking all of the joy out of love for me, but I want to prove it to you. The place we're going to go is 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Now, you've heard this verse before. I can promise you can heard this verse before, because if you've been to a wedding, you've heard this verse. It's so funny about this passage is people will come to me who have no relationship with God. They don't go to church. They don't even believe in God. And they're like, hey, I really want you to read the love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13. I want you to read that at the wedding. And I was like, okay. Why? You don't even believe in this stuff. And they're like, oh, it's just really good stuff. And I think we kind of hear it and we go, oh yeah, it's good in principle, but we don't take the time to really dig in deep and listen, because you're at a wedding a lot of times or whatever. You just dig down deep and say, this is what love actually is. And if you go through it, it is a practical list. Again, I want you to think about this. Is you determine whether or not you love somebody and whether you're showing somebody true love, this is your checklist. So 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4 starts off with 3 words that we all probably know. Love is patient. God knew what he was doing when he put those 3 words at the beginning of this, because there's a whole list here, and he just starts off with those, because how many times you've been just ready to drown your kids in the bathtub, and and then that pops in your head, and you're like, okay, love is patient, right? We don't even need the rest of the list. We just need to be reminded that love is patient. Love is patient. When you think about it, we all struggle with patience. I bet everybody in here, I could have you raise your hand and be like, yep, patience, got an issue with patience. But the thing is, patience is the most base, selfish thing, isn't it? What patience really is just putting your emotions on pause. That's all that being patient is. If you were a robot, if you were a T-1000, you would find it very easy to be patient with somebody, because you could hit the pause button or you wouldn't even have the emotions. You'd have all the time in the world for somebody to say something stupid or do something stupid or be hurtful. It wouldn't bother you at all. So really, patience is just putting your emotions on pause. And yet, we don't have the patience for that. And really, we're whiny little girls. We're just I want to fire back. I want to end the relationship. I want to say something back. We don't have the basic patience to care for somebody enough to just put our emotions on pause. And so Paul says, and again, look at this. He says, love is patient. That means if you're not patient, you may feel really great towards somebody, but if you're not being patient with them, you are not loving them. Love is patience, and patience is love. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is kind. I value straightforwardness. That's always been me. I grew up in a family like that. We say things that are really straightforward, things that are cutting at times, but at least we didn't beat around the bush. We were straightforward with each other. So I grew up really valuing that. One of my favorite lines in any movie is from Nacho Libre, which is like one of the greatest movies ever made. And Jack Black, who's Nacho Libre, and he's working with his partner, and they're luchadors in Mexico, and they wrestle the whole time, and they're losing all the time. So towards the end of the movie, Jack Black, Nacho Libre, he turns to his partner, and he says, "The reason we lose is because you do not believe in God." And his partner responds back with straightforwardness, and I love and I value this kind of straightforwardness. He responds back, "The reason we lose is because you're fat," right? I value that kind of straightforwardness. And some of you in here do too. Just like, let's not beat around the bush. Let's not be diplomatic. Let's not use 100 different words to just say you're fat, right? Let's just cut to the point. And really, the more we get to know love, the more we understand that love, and the more I've understood love is kind. And love takes the time to use 100 different words to say you're fat. So love is patient, love is kind. I can say that as a fat person. I know my wife's going to go home and just be like, "You're fat," like I'm in the middle of my hamburger. Love is patient, love is kind. It doesn't envy. Does not envy. Think about what envy is. Really deep stuff here. When you envy somebody, you're saying, "I want the stuff that they have." Maybe it's the car they have, the house they have, the life they have, the wife they have, the personality they have. I want the clothes they have. I want what they have. I don't want them to have it, and I want it for myself. That's envy. And basically, when I grew up, one of the jobs as the youngest kid my job was to haul the slop out to the pigs. So, we didn't have a garbage disposal. When you scraped off your plate at the end of the day, you just scraped it in this little ice cream bucket, and it would get all stinky underneath the sink. And anyway, so I'd go take that out, and I'd take it out to the hogs. There's 30 or 40 butcher-sized hogs out there. I'd throw it out there, and what do the pigs do? They all converge on the slop, and they push each other out of the way and knock each other down because they want it all for themselves, and they don't want anybody else to have it. Just, that's what they do. There's what the pigs do. You and I, when we envy, that's the Homo sapien intelligent version of what pigs do, right? We're saying, "I don't want you to have it. I want me to have it," right? And we begin to obsess with other people not having stuff, and we get jealous, and somebody gets a new car, and all of a sudden we begin to envy that, or somebody comes with new clothes, and we envy that, and we're like, "I don't want you to have it. I want me to have it." Can you think of something more selfish, more conceited, more you-focused than envy? And if you envy somebody or envy really anybody, and you're obsessed with them not having it and you having it, you will never be able to love because you're just living in the you, yourself, and I world. And so love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast. Or the word we might put in there is it doesn't brag. It isn't cocky. We all might as well walk around with a sign that says, "Please value me," right? Please value me. And so we walk into a party or we walk into a family event or something like that, and we have kind of this resume that we've built. And we're kind of like, "Hey, I need to let people know why they need to value me, why they need to respect me, the things that I've accomplished or the things that I've done or the person that I am." And they won't be able to see that right off the bat, so I need to make sure I draw attention to the things that I've done because that's where a lot of our security comes from. And so that's the reason we brag. And really, there's two different kinds of people. You've probably heard this said. There's two different kinds of people. There's somebody that walks into the room and says, "Here I am." And there's people that walk into the room and say, "There you are." And as long as we are people that are focused here and we're trying to fill out our resume and trying to convince people that they should value us and respect us, we're not going to be able to ever really love because we're focused here. Love does not boast. It is not proud. How many relationships have ended because somebody got insulted and they were too humble to look past, they were too proud and not humble enough to look past it? How many relationships have ended because somebody couldn't say they were sorry, because they couldn't admit that they had faults, that they had issues? They couldn't admit, "Hey, I'm the one that was in the wrong," or at least here's my part of the equation. Pride blinds. It's impossible to genuinely love somebody when you are proud. And you might feel in love with somebody. You might just want to spend all your time with a person. But if you are proud, you are not loving them. It does not dishonor others. I feel like this is a good one to post up on, one we don't think about a lot. I came from a world, just growing up, this was just sort of how I was, this was my factory setting, and this might be your factory setting. I honor people who are worthy of my honor, or at least that's how I used to be. That's just the way I grew up, that's the way I thought, and it wasn't just like the way I operated, it was like a moral code for me. Like it was right and it was good to only give people honor who meet my approval or meet my standards or who are worthy of honor. One time I realized how deep this went in my life. I was at a church in Missouri, and I was the associate pastor at the time, and there was this guy in the church who I had a hard time honoring, respecting him. He was the kind of guy that he would ask for a meeting with me, and I could tell he wanted to say something, but he would beat around the bush, and he would never say it, and I'd kind of heard through the grapevine that he had some criticisms of me and my ministry or whatever, and so, and I would sit down, and I would try to talk to him about it, and he would kind of beat around the bush, and he never really said anything, and I'm just like, come on, man, come on, just spit it out, and he never really would, and just a lot of different things in his life. He wasn't the kind of guy that I just automatically honored or respected. I wasn't clocked that way. And so I had some frustrating meetings with him. I turned to the senior pastor at the time, who was roughly about my age, and I said, hey, maybe you could sit down and talk with him, because this guy's just sort of a pain in my butt. So let's sit down and talk. So we sat down with this guy, and we talked, and this guy began to say the same stuff that I just don't respect. I'm like, where are you going? What are you saying? Why are you even here? And I looked over at the minister, and I tried to communicate, how you're in a tense meeting, and you try to communicate, and I was doing this. But what a moron, right? Am I right? See what I got to deal with? And this guy, he would talk, and I watched as the senior minister showed this man honor. Even though I had set up the backstory and the things that he was saying, I was just telling him there's no reason why you should honor this guy. He gave him honor and respect. He showed patience. He let this guy talk. He asked probing questions, and he allowed him to talk and get things out. And as he felt more comfortable opening up, he began to kind of insult me and insult the senior minister. And I was just like, in my head, I'm like, okay, so can we end this meeting? Can we run this guy out of town? Like when do we get our axe and chop somebody's head off, right? And we're going through this meeting, and I watched, even as he was being insulted, as he showed this guy honor, and he gave him honor, and it took way longer. The meeting was much longer than the meetings I had had with him, and he was kind, and he showed him the respect and honor, regardless of whether he earned it, whether he was worthy of it or not. And I learned something that day, and I began to really think about it, and I began to think, not everybody's worthy of honor all the time. Even the people in my life, that small list of people that I say, yeah, those people are worthy of my honor and my respect. Actually, as I get to know people more and more, not even those people are worthy of honor and respect all of the time. In fact, nobody is really worthy of your honor. And you yourself are not worth God's honor. And deep down, those of us, and this is transparent, this is you if you have this code, those of us who live by the code, that we only give honor to the people that are honor, we live with a deep sense of insecurity because we know we don't even meet our own standards all the time. And God gives people honor who are not worthy of honor. Because what? Because God is love. And that's what love does. Love gives people honor. I hope I'm a different person. I've been working at that for many years. Now I just take out that code and I give every person honor to the best of my ability. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. Why don't you go, just real practical step. Go throughout your week and think about all the things that you do that are completely selfless. Completely selfless. They're for the purpose of another person. It's just because I love and I care for that other person. I don't really care what happens. Think about how many things that you do are completely selfless. I bet your list will actually be pretty short. We've got a 2-month-old in the house, and she's up at night 2 or 3 times a night. My wife is a boss, so she just wakes up in the night with the baby all the time, and she just does that. She fulfills that role because she knows the crib might be thrown out the window in the middle of the night or anything, but she gets up with the baby, and everything's fantastic. Now, here's the thing. I love that, but I also want to sleep through the night guilt-free. I don't want to just sleep through the night. I want to sleep through the night guilt-free. So we had the baby for a couple weeks, and it was towards the end of the week, and we got back from a trip, and she was just, I could tell Bethany was just absolutely sleep deprived. She was just babbling nonsense, right? And I was like, baby, you need to go to sleep, right? You go to sleep. And so she went to bed, and then I cleaned the house, I had the kids clean the house, and I pretended to be in the garage doing something, and we got the house all clean. We went and got her Jimmy John's, right? And so she woke up and she was like, oh, that was so wonderful and so nice. And the house is clean and Jimmy John's and everything. She was just so nice. And I'm like, yeah, that really was nice, right? That was great of me. Why did I do it? Because I love her and I care for her. Yeah. But it's mainly because I want to sleep through the night guilt-free, right? I just want to be like, well, I did something for you, so you just get up and get that baby. Don't give me no guff about it, right? How many times do you do things that are completely selfless? Even the nice things you do for other people, a lot of times they revolve around a motive that serves you. But love is that rare occasion where you do something that is not self-seeking. Love is not easily angered. Doesn't say that love doesn't get angry. God gets angry. In fact, God gets wrathful. He gets a step above or several steps above angry. He gets angry. So anger in itself isn't wrong, but he doesn't get easily angered. He is patient with people. His anger is thought through. It is just. It isn't the spur of the moment. Love is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Okay, so like if you're one of those people where you're like, you know what, none of that's really me. I could be more patient, I could be more kind and stuff like that, but I'm really killing it. I don't brag, I'm not that prideful, and I'm not really self-seeking. This is the one where I got everybody, right? You walk out of here today, and if you just throw away everything else on here and you walk away and go, you know what, love keeps no record of wrongs, because I can promise you this is what we do. This is our life. This is our pastime. This is our hobby. We spend our lives keeping records of wrongs. And when somebody does something, we don't always necessarily retaliate. In fact, a lot of times we forgive somebody or we completely ignore it. But one thing we do is we get out this little imaginary list and we write that down, Not necessarily for any reason, just we might need that in our back pocket sometime. And then when somebody else does something wrong, we just take that and we mark that down. We got their name, and we've got actually a pretty advanced tally list of things that people have done wrong to us, or just things that we've seen done wrong in their lives. By show of hands, how many people have been married for over 20 years in here? Okay, we got a few people who have been married for over 20 years. I want to ask you to show your hands, but I know that you guys have had fights, probably even this last year, and one of you brought up something that happened 15 years ago. 15 years ago, you brought up something that happened 15 years ago. Do you know what was going on 15 years ago? Peyton Manning was a rookie 15 years ago. Actually, he wasn't even a rookie. He'd been in the league for 2 years, right? That's how long ago, 15 years. Y2K was 15 years ago, right? That's a long time ago, and we're pulling up things that happened all the way back then. Why? Because here's the thing. We want our list to be smaller than your list. And we figure if our list is smaller than your list, then we're the ones that get a ride off on a white horse, that we're the ones in the right and everything like that. And the best way to make sure that my list is smaller than your list, well, it could be to make our list smaller, but the easier way is to make your list bigger so we don't forget things. Love doesn't do that. Love keeps no record of wrongs. And when God forgives you, He doesn't keep it in the back of His mind. He's not waiting to use that. He doesn't lease that out to the devil. It's just gone. Love, real love, keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. This is probably, to me, this is the deepest one on the list because this is the least practiced. What I mean by that is love does not delight in evil. Again, I think it's always funny when people want me to read this at a wedding or they want this to be the sermon, because what happens after a wedding? At the reception? Evil, right? Not all the time and not everybody, but after the wedding, a lot of times couples will invite me to the reception, so I show up, free food, right? So I show up, and a lot of times it's a date, we show up and I'm at the reception, and it's almost like I can feel them coming up to me going, well, you don't have to stick around, Pastor, right? It's about to get crazy in here, so I mean, if you just want to go, that's fine, right? But I just think it's so funny. People want this read at their wedding. Loveth patient, loveth kind. It does not delight in evil, and that's just like, yeah, it's a great verse. And then go and evil, and people get smashed, and people go home with people they shouldn't be going home with, and that's. But love does not delight. It doesn't rejoice in evil. And I could go a bunch of different directions, right? You can apply that in a lot of different areas. If you're dating somebody, you can kind of figure out if there's somebody that delights in evil or not, and you can go in a bunch of different directions. But just as a practical example, so many times in our marriages, just an example, we want to have the relationship be really good. And of course that means that the sex needs to be good, right? And that's the thing we got to conquer. And so in an attempt to make that good and spice that up, and really the goal overall is love, couples will look at porn together. And they're like, yeah, it's going to work. And it worked that one time, or it worked for that season in our life, and that was pretty hot, really, that one time. So we did that in our life. But love, real love, not just what you're experiencing or the passion you're experiencing, but real love, it doesn't delight in evil. Well, I don't know, married couple, I don't know if porn's really like evil if you're married and you're... Well, yeah, it is. It's like Jesus says it is, and let's say you and him were in a meeting. Let's say his vote counts as two, okay? So, yeah, it's evil. He says if somebody commits adultery, right? I mean, if somebody lusts after somebody in their heart, it's as if they've committed adultery. So you are together with your spouse. You're trying to love. You're trying to love by spicing things up a little bit, but you are delighting in evil, and you're doing the exact opposite of what you want to do. And you might be sitting there going, oh man, that's us. It's probably time for you to go have a conversation. If you want an easy step on how we're going to follow Jesus, just have that conversation together and say, hey, we just need to stop that, and you need to dig down deeper and figure out how to have like a real relationship that doesn't use the fluff. So love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices with the truth. Now some people look at that and go like, yeah, so when I ask you where you were last night, you're going to tell me the truth. That's what love is. Yeah, but I think he's saying capital T truth here. He's saying it doesn't delight in evil, but it rejoices in the truth. What's the truth? Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And I got to tell you, whether you're married, whether it's your kids, whether it's just a relationship you're trying to have with a friend where you're trying to really love them, you can't really love them unless you value and delight in and rejoice in the truth that Jesus is God's Son and his words are true. Real love, and that's why God's love is so different, is because it is built on and is established on his truth. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It, and here's some always words. Always is a big word. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. I got to tell you, when I find a reason to end a relationship with somebody that I find hard to love, I like that. I've had 2 significant moves in my life, really 3 significant moves. And I tell you what, moving is the most wonderful thing on earth because you get to leave all those crazy people behind. You get all these new relationships and you can kind of cut off people. I know I sound like a horrible person, right? But it's just easy to just be done with it. And it is. It's easy. But love is deeper than that. Love perseveres. Love doesn't look for an opportunity to get out of, away from friendships, relationships, but they figure out a way to persevere in them. And finally, love never fails. So here's the challenge I want for you today. You might feel some way. You might have emotions for somebody. You might be connecting. You might be like, yeah, oh, they're my BFF, right? You might feel like you love somebody. But love is a very simple black and white list. And if you're trying to figure out if the person you're going to marry or the person that's your boyfriend or the relationship you're in right now, if you're trying to figure out if they really love you, then all you need to do is go through the list. And if you're trying to figure out if you really love somebody, then you go through the list. And here's the list. It's really simple. When I came in last night and we put the slide up, they were like, can't we make that look prettier somehow? And I'm like, no, it's a list. It's a black and white list. Take all the fluff out of it, right? That's what it is. Work through the list. And the questions you need to ask yourself are you being patient? If you want to love somebody, be kind. Don't envy. Don't brag. Be humble. Honor everyone. Do things for others. Don't get easily angered. Don't keep a list of wrongs. Don't enjoy evil. Enjoy the truth. Protect, trust, hope, persevere. I couldn't give it to you any more simple. That is love. And that's the right list. And if you want to love your spouse, your kids, if you want to love the people in your life, work through that list. And if there's an area, if you can just honestly say that's unchecked for me, then start there. Don't get overwhelmed by it. Just start somewhere, knowing that God's power and unlimited resources at your disposal because he wants you to be everything on this list.